Well, a bit of a different demo day versus how I normally do things. But I figured, you know what, 'tis the season, it is how it is, and I wanted to give a little alternate type of stream a go. Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing okay for the most part, just kind of tired, but it's like mid-semester. That's how that can happen. But I decided that I wanted to have a little theme for a demo day today. We're going horror. We're going to try some spooky games because I wanted to at least give that a try before, Halloween is up and everything. So I have a small collection of demos. I don't think we can get to all of them today. I feel like at most we may end up getting 3, depending on the length of some of these. So, yeah, just figured out to give a heads up. And one I already have my eye on, as far as a possible avenue. So let's wait till the game boots up, and then I can turn this off. I really ought to have something a bit more fancy for this demo day thing, but it works. Okay, there we go. See if does it display on my capture. There it is. I was worried for a second. And before I managed to get the game capture up, it showed the Unity symbol and I made a sour face. Although, apparently the CEO of Unity has stepped down from his position, which, fucking great, because it's the same guy because I learned about this recently, about the Unity situation, where the guy that is the CEO of Unity used to be a EA executive, and he's actually the guy that gave Suda51 a ton of grief back in the days where he was developing Shadows of the Damned, and Suda, out of spite, made a in-game parody version of him the final boss of No More Heroes 3, and, learning that now, I'm like, holy shit. So, that was pretty cool. So yeah, this game is called Omen Exiting Hunger. So, I don't really know anything about this. Apparently you're a detective of some kind that is going through some kind of investigation, and stuff gets kind of weird. I saw some bits of trailers and stuff when I looked at the Steam page for it, and it seems to me like this game is very text heavy, so it may involve a lot of reading, which is fine because I've got a near full thing of water next to me. So, yeah. Let's just dive in. So, this will be my demo grab bag of horror. Spooky. New York, 12th of February, 1927. Prologue, the stolen car case. The gloomy afternoon sky has the color of cigarette smoke, capable of making you pinch your throat with the sweet need for nicotine. The outline of a large wooden house, apparently old and dilapidated, stands in front of the windshield, completing the cheerful picture of a terrible workday. It's not that strange, really. Ricker Avenue is a place forgotten by God, where bare trees and wild animals rule the roost. The people who live there usually have dirty business to hide, and the junkyard you're investigating is no exception. It seems like the editor-in-chief is very interested in this stolen car recycling business, unlike you. You park at a certain distance from the dilapidated house for greater caution. According to your informant with the police, there shouldn't be anyone there until Monday, but caution is never too much. I like the look of this, and what's this over here? Oh, that's neat. We have a little character glossary. That's awesome. Clues, locations. Ricker Avenue. Rough and rather isolated area of Queens where the John Mahoney Junkyard sits. It is said to be one of the most important junkyards in the city, and obviously nobody lives in this place. which looks like it could collapse at the first strong gust of wind. So I'm guessing this is Edward Thurber, my editor-in-chief at the New York Gazette, a newspaper he runs with rigor and shrewdness. Despite his inquisitive and sometimes overly affected manner, he loves art and is the only friend I have left from my old life in Boston. He believed in my potential as an artist and offered me a new job at the paper when my family died. Okay. I love that you have a character glossary. That's really nice. You reach to the right to grab the folder containing all the information you have on the investigation, but your hand slips on the treacherous surface of the cardboard, which spills all its contents under the seat. You curse to your own carelessness with several uncreative expressions, and as you collect all the fallen papers from the mat, you come across, along with some sheets from old investigations now concluded, a little black-covered booklet in your hand. It's a diary that you had kept until a few months ago, and that you had filled with disjointed thoughts and philosophical reflections helped by a few too many drinks. A rather unsuccessful project, given the unworthy end you had reserved for it, abandoned and buried under the seat, as if it had never existed. Without even thinking about it, you start to leaf through the notebook with a distant look, letting the memories of the last few years cloud your vision. Oh, this is very nicely presented. I like this. Saturday, May 15th, 1920. The first image that appears before you is that of a baby in swaddling clothes, held in the loving arms of a woman in bed. Your heart tightens at that memory, imprinted in your mind as if you had it right in front of your eyes. The most beautiful day of your life. In fact, of your life. You and your beloved Marguerite. Or Margaret? I think? No, it'd be Marguerite if it was an I think. Yeah, that should be it. Who, until a little while ago, were worried about the complications that the midwife had feared during the pregnancy, could now hold in your hands the fruit of your love. Young, unmarried, with none of your parents to support you, you had still decided to keep that little creature, which now appeared to you as the most beautiful and important thing in the universe. And precisely because in that period the first daisies were sprouting, you had decided to call her Daisy. Oh, cool, you have a little timeline of events. Friday, 12th of May, 1922. The drawing shows the little door of the apartment below the one where you lived with Margaret at the time, in an old and poorly frequented alley near the cemetery, the place in Boston that you used to call your workshop. Painting was a passion for you, but not very lucrative. The few earnings came from occasional clients and the odd jobs that Margaret did. So when a very distinguished man had come to your door, you thought he was lost. Instead, he was an art critic from New York. His name was Edward Thurber, and he was struck by your precise and realistic representation of the nature of things, yet pregnant with artist's feelings. He had therefore proposed that you present yourself at the Boston Art Circle. A painting of landscapes, painting of people. So it's... You know what? This is kind of reminding me of the opening sequence of Firewatch, where you could kind of adjust your backstory as you learn about your details. That's pretty cool. I like that. Main character may strike me as somebody who likes to... Painting was a passion, but not very lucrative. So when... Old, poorly frequented... Maybe he would want to draw... Maybe he'd want to paint landscapes because he didn't have a view? Or just go from the mind? Precise and realistic representation of the nature of things, yet pregnant with the artist's feelings. Realistic representation of the nature of things. I'm going to say people. And so many people had been able to see your paintings in this small exhibition. You were excited and had trouble speaking, but your new friend, with a nice glass of bourbon in his hand, was a great help, acting as curator of your own work. You smile as you think of the appreciation you have aroused in some of them. Elliot Thurber, the young brother of your patron. Wait. Okay, Edward and Elliot. Yeah, Edward and Elliot. That's pretty neat, though. Oh, I like that. I get to go back in the timeline. Ah, that's great. The younger brother of your patron had called them an excellent alternative to the cold mechanicality of photography, which fails to offer us the true personality of the subjects it portrays, except perhaps those of Hein's Heinz, I think. Hein? Right? I think so. Hein's social denunciations. After this event, you began to get some commissions. As the months went by, there were always a few clients who would come and ask for a painting, and that had enabled your family to survive comfortably for a few years. Tuesday, June 24th, 1942. The sketch on that tear-stained, wavy paper depicts the three of you together in a moment of happiness that had just seemed to have been cruelly snatched away by fate. No one knows exactly why it had happened. The doctor had said he had warned you of the possibility, but you had preferred to ignore it. No, you had preferred to ignore it, because you couldn't bear the thought of losing Daisy, and you had behaved as if nothing was wrong. Had this perhaps made the situation worse? Yet you would never let her want for anything, and she seemed so happy. At the funeral, Margareta had not shed a tear, remaining impassive in front of a small coffin being lowered into the grave, under the gaze of a few other people. You had held her, but she had not shown any reaction, and at that precise moment, you had foreseen the end of everything. So Daisy was, the joy of my life, whom I loved more than anything in the world, sweet, energetic, and always cheerful child. Although her health was never perfect, her untimely death cast a shadow over my life that still lingers today, and from which I have no way of escaping. I did not mean to click that. Oops. In the November 2nd, 1924, on Sunday. In the following months, Margaret had succumbed to melancholy, developing a morbid sense of faith, and often, from your study, you heard her reciting the rosary for the soul of Daisy. Your married life had never recovered, and you both became more and more estranged each day. Among the pages you see the small wooden rosary peeking out. In those worn beads, however, your eyes still see the darkness of the bedroom. Your nose smells the pungent odor that had assaulted you when you entered, and your ears can still hear that scream of despair as if your own throat were emitting it now. When you realized that your pistol, an old reminder of your time in the military, was missing from the desk drawer, it was already too late. She had decided to join your little girl. You, instead, had remained there crying for both of them. Oh, God. Blanchard, Margaret Blanchard. My partner, whom I loved so much that I gave up all my family ties to stay with her. I somehow survived Daisy's disappearance, but she did not. Since then, my heart has somehow been closed, and although I have had several adventures since I came to New York, no woman has ever been able to replace her. Probably because it's not possible. I do love... Wow, no descriptions, but you are given a sketch, which I do like. That's nice. One sketch depicts a plump, elderly man with a bushy beard handing you a basket containing a black cat with one eye. You had just moved into your current apartment in New York. He lived next door, but was moving to a new home where he couldn't keep his cat. He had asked if you would be willing to take care of his loyal companion, telling you that if you fed him, he would immediately become attached to you. You didn't know how much time your new job as a journalist offered by Thurber you required, or how long you would stay. But in the end, faced with that gentle little face, you gave in. And so, on the man's advice, you gave your unexpected friend a new name. Mens like the first pharaoh who unified Egypt, Pluto like the god of death in classic mythology, Salem as the witch city from which your family comes from. I like the name Pluto for a cat, that's cute. The portrait of Colin appears before you. He was the first friend you made in New York. You were doing research for an article on some smugglers who were supposed to sell a batch of gin to be sent to Chicago. You knew the police would intervene, and you had gone to the scene, well hidden and ready to observe the situation. But when the authorities intervened, a commotion broke out. One of the criminals started firing a machine gun, forcing the police to retreat while his accomplices secured the load. One of the officers had fallen to the ground, wounded by a bullet. The aggressor had him at gunpoint, ordering his colleague not to play any tricks. However, you were close enough to intervene. Made noise to attract attention. You started banging your fist on the surface of the container behind which you were hiding, making noise to get attention. Caught off guard by the noise, the criminal had started firing blindly in your direction. It was at that moment that a stray bullet hit you in the leg. You had heard another gunshot, but the pain had blinded you, causing you to lose consciousness. When you woke up, the man that the criminal was threatening and for whom you had intervened at the expense of your life was in the bed next to yours. He had introduced himself as Detective Colin Wright. Wait, he was in the bed? Oh. Colin Wright. You had smiled and introduced yourself as well. During those days of convalescence, since he himself had to recover from a nasty wound, you had the opportunity to talk a lot. It was then that you realized you had found a friend in that big city. However, someone else had written that article. Oh, cool, I can just click that. Okay, so that's Colin. He got a scar on his eye. The first and only friend I made in New York. I saved his life during a robbery I was supposed to be a bystander to, and we have been close ever since. We also work together on a professional level. He gives me some insight into police cases, and I do the same for the paper's investigations. But he's always afraid that his superiors might find out, so he's obsessed with discretion. Okay. You close your eyes in the journal in unison, chasing away memories of the past with a deep sigh. You put the journal back in its place and focus on the real reason for your presence on Riker Avenue. You look out the window at the incessant icy drizzle that had begun to water the earth. You snort and regret not having brought an umbrella. You then go back through the papers in your folder, checking that you are in the right place and summarizing any information that might be useful. John Mahoney is the classic dodgy character who dresses up stolen cars and then sells them to the highest bidder. An uninteresting and moderately dangerous item. The worst combination. You get out of the car and find yourself in the middle of a ghostly landscape littered with car wrecks. The forest gives way to a sort of open-air rubbish dump in the center of which stands a big house, the undisputed queen of all the wreckage. The force with which it stands out against the desolate sky is almost painful to the eyes, while the wind carries the mournful squeaks of rotting wood, which all in all seems to defy the weather and the cruelty of time. Richard Pikeman. Quaint indeed. Or Richard Pickman? Pikeman? I think it's Pikeman. You make the comment half-mouthed and sarcastically, warding off the need to smoke a cigarette to relieve your nervousness. Yeah, because this was back in the 20s, where cigarettes were basically, like, considered healthy back in the day. God. John Mahoney. A bad guy who launders cars between Queens and the Bronx. He started out helping bigger criminals than himself, but then managed to strike out on his own, and now the police are hot on his trail to frame him. He's got people helping him with his dirty work, and he's generally pretty careful to keep a low profile. So finding any evidence that compromises him will be very helpful to the investigation and to my research. Compared to Manhattan, this place is incredibly alien. It seems so far away from civilization. But you know you wouldn't have to go that far to reach the sea, with its harbors and ships. Searching for clues, you pass the tin cemetery and find your... The tin cemetery? I'm guessing tin for color. And find yourself on one side of the house, your watchful gaze gliding from side to side, hoping to uncover some information that will end your investigation as soon as possible. Objective, have to find stolen cars, evidence of stolen cars. Some cars still seem to be in good condition, too good to be found in a junkyard. What the fuck? What's a doll doing on a branch? I'm not aware that Mahoney had any children. Okay, so we have a doll. A doll found on Riker Avenue, strung up on the branch of a tree. It looks rather old and shabby, but judging by the fact that it's not discolored by the weather, it has probably been placed there for a short time. It seems that someone has been burning some rubbish here. I can't reach the bottom of the barrel. If only I could. Well, I'd say I've had my fair share of exercise for today. Let's see what we have here. Burnt fabric. They look like clothes. Do they burn them to keep them warm? No, it's winter. But it's not that cold. There must be something underneath. The burnt out rubbish, the anticipation of this wonderful day was palpable. Some burnt pieces of cloth. I think they might be the remains of clothes. But there is hardly anything left. The fire has almost completely devoured them, along with all the contents of the barrel they were in. You can still make out the color. Some are black or gray, some are blue. Really too little to say anything else. What's this outhouse? The bolt on the door is completely corroded. You must find out what they're hiding inside. Kick the door. No way, but the cops make it look so... No way, but the cops make it look so easy. I need to find something heavy enough to help me break the bolt. A can of black paint. Well, I wouldn't repaint the living room walls with it. No, you don't want to paint a room black. That would be terrible in the summer. That'd be terrible in the summer. Riker Avenue doll. Okay. I keep hitting that. I'm so used to closing out menu buttons being in the corner, the right corner of it. God damn it. Anything else around here? Okay, WASD does not do anything. Anything on the rock? Well, it's a large stone. I don't think it stands much of a chance against a rifle, but it's certainly better than my knuckles. Use the large stone. It takes a well-struck blow. Perfect. It was certainly more useful here than on Mahoney's head, and less illegal. I'm curious if this is Mahoney's private stash or if he's reselling bottles at a premium. I have to wonder how different. I have to wonder how that worked back in the Prohibition era. They're full of gasoline. Some of them are ready to indulge in pyromania to sweep the dust under the carpets. I would say these plates are not here for collecting. I have what I need. I have what I need to close this damn investigation. A butcher's cleaver. Who knows what that poor ladder did to Mahoney to deserve this? It is less dusty than all the other junk around here. It probably's been used recently. Could have used that outside. Anything else? What's this hook? Nope, 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 nope. Okay. Perhaps there's some detail I've missed. I better have another look. Yeah, he's right. I should. Found the stolen evidence. Is there anything in here that I'm missing? Nothing. No. No. Proof I was looking for. Will they work at night? Doesn't matter. Doesn't sound very clever to me. A wagon wheel. I wonder if they painted the horses too. I think that's all with that. No, yeah. Make all the cars the same color, maybe because black goes with everything. Okay. Among the plates in the shed should be that of a Chrysler, which I'm willing to bet was not black the day before yesterday. I think that's everything. Yeah. Yeah, that should be it. God damn it, it's making me doubt. Nothing in the windows. Anything else in the shed? Just rope, pitchfork. No, nothing else. Okay. No footprint. Oh! The earth is loose here. Someone has buried something. Some baby shoes? I have a bad feeling there is more to this place than just recycled car traffic. Okay, good thing that I saw that and I was like, wait a second. A pair of children's shoes found buried in Riker Avenue. They look well cared for, maybe even new. But someone has scribbled on them with colored wax crayons. Little owner, I'm guessing. He tried to do that thing that they do in 6th grade whenever they tried to put marker on Converse. Never understood that trend. I always thought that ruined a perfectly good shoe. Anything else? Okay, that was really it. Alright. Well, it seems there's nothing left to do here. As you make your way through the undergrowth, a sudden noise catches your attention. It sounds like a sort of heavy squeaking, but it lasts barely a moment. It came from the house, you're sure of that. So there is someone. What was the information you were given wrong? You can feel the adrenaline pumping through your veins and your investigative spirit rising. This could be the perfect opportunity to catch John Mahoney or one of his henchmen red-handed. Although such a gamble might mean playing heads or tails with the possibility of having a gun pointed at you. A more tempting prospect than returning to the newsroom with nothing more than a pile of forged license plates. Peek through the window. You walk around the house looking for a window from which you can get a good view. Will it be harder to see anything? It will be harder to see anything, but at least you will be in a safe position. Some of the windows are obscured by peeling shutters. Others look out on completely empty rooms. In one you can see a moldy sofa and a rickety table with some rubbish on it, but nothing else. Finally, there is a small window at the back, its glass cracked but clean enough to peer inside. On the other side of the glass you see a small room full of piles of junk. The first thing you notice, illuminated by the only beam of light that enters the room, is some sort of overalls, crumpled and abandoned on the floor. Your gaze continues to follow the bright blade chasing across the wooden floor until it crosses the silhouette of a child. You blink and sharpen your gaze, shocked by the bizarre vision you see through the encrusted glass, but it does not change. It still presents the same image, this child embedded in the stark shadows of the shack. The first thing you can think of is to make sure the baby's okay, but your eyes cannot help but debunk all the lies you were trying to tell yourself. The baby is completely naked, curled up in an unnatural position, and there's blood. Lots of blood. You squint and back away for a moment. What kind of place did Thurber send you to? It was only supposed to be the lair of a car thief and not the scene of a nightmare. You're still trying to process the image of the child cowering in the reddish puddle when the door of the room begins to open, forcing you to shift your gaze to the figure emerging from the dark doorway. What? It looks about the size of a man, but the resemblance of humanity ends with this tragic realization. Its skin is whistling. Wait. Whitish? Is that how you pronounce that? I've never seen that word. Its skin is whitish and wrinkled, like the clothes left to soak in water too long. Dry rolls of dermis? I guess that's another word for dirt. Dry rolls of dermis piled on top of each other, hanging disgustedly in small, spongy pyramids. A strange rhythmic noise leads you to the lower limbs of the beast, slender and thin, culminating in the hooves of a horse. The hands are inhabited by thread-like sharp claws, and the snout is a circular cavern lined with fangs bathed in viscous slime. I probably should read it in my head first before I do anything else, but okay. Handsuit. I saw a handsuit in the same room on Riker Avenue where the child was devoured. Strange, since the rest of the rubbish had accumulated where all... Wait. Strange since the rest of the rubbish that had accumulated there was all household items. I vow to investigate. You don't know how to interpret what you... Okay, so maybe I shouldn't be checking any updates to my diary until the scene is over because I could get spoiled on things. You don't know how to interpret what you see. Perhaps you are going mad, or perhaps the stress of recent times is playing tricks on you. You still can't wrap your head around it as you watch the creature leap at its inert victim and begin to ravage the wretched remains of the child with greedy eagerness. But then the creature suddenly freezes, sniffing the air for a moment. With exasperating slowness, it turns its snout towards the window and swallows a piece of meat with a disgusted twitch of its round jaw. The monster walks at a slow, cadenced pace towards the window, bringing the wrinkling lump of blood and skin closer to your face. It has no eyes, but you can feel it staring at you. Your body reacts suddenly and instinctively, while your mind is still caught up in the horror you have just... Ooh, that's good sound design. Ooh. Ooh. Horror you have just witnessed. You sprint off the porch and start running without looking back, barely stopping yourself from screaming at the top of your lungs, combining the sound of your terror with the sound of shattering glass and a scream that does not associate the beast behind you with any creature of the animal kingdom. Your muscles seem to remember where you parked, and soon you are in the driver's seat, turning the key with sweaty, trembling hands. Your vision is so blurred that you have to try a couple of times before you succeed, each time with increasing breathlessness, fearing that the creature will charge at the car. On the third desperate attempt, the keys find their place and the engine starts to roar with a sound that seems so damn reassuring at that moment. You make a dangerous U-turn, skid brutally, and find yourself imagining this running thing trying to grind the few meters separating its giant claws from your body. You don't have to wait for the scene to really dawn on you. Your foot presses down on the accelerator, and you can almost hear its jaw drop. You can almost hear his jaw drop as your trusty car speeds away from Riker Avenue. Only a few miles from the junkyard house, you resume breathing with a semblance of normality. It's as if your heart won't stop beating wildly, and it's only now that you realize you're probably in danger of having a heart attack. You survived, and that is the most important thing. But the memory of what you saw is imprinted on your pupils. It's imprinted on your pupils. On your pupils. An image that will never go away. You clutch the steering wheel with your bloodless hands, occasionally letting out audible gasps, trying to relieve the tension that still pervades you, but to no avail. Your shirt is drenched in sweat, yet you are shaken by cold shivers, as if you had a fever. The first time you manage to take a deep breath is when the rain begins to pound the windows of your car with the force of an unusual summer downpour. At that moment, you see in the distance an impressionist's painting interrupted by the storm. The island of Manhattan, so reassuring with its lights cutting through the surrounding darkness. God, this is some pretty art, too. I really like this art. Every now and then, you instinctively check your rearview mirror, terrified at the thought of this absurd creature following you. You know it is completely irrational, but your brain is still reeling from what you have witnessed. Monsters do not exist, you tell yourself, except in books and in the beliefs of the superstitious and the mad. But no costume could ever so perfectly simulate what you had seen. It was too natural to be artificial. To be an artifice, not artificial. Well, same meaning. And the blood, all the blood. That too, like the child's body, looked so damn real. You are not even sure if the images flashing before your eyes are the ones you witnessed, or if they are the product of your own distraught mind. What haunts you in the midst of... Oh, God. What haunts you in the midst of this chaos of emotions is that you did nothing for this child. Was he really dead? Or could he have been saved? Could you have saved him from the monster's clutches? Would it have been worth facing the creature, if only to die a hero? You can give yourself none of these answers, and the lump that forms in your throat sweeps away all but one thought. You have abandoned a child to the cruelest of fates. Again. You cross the bridge that leads to Manhattan Island, and you cannot help but admire the majestic skyscrapers that greet you in the distance. The luminaria of the big city will help you chase away the tormenting visions of the hovel as you head towards the dizzying streets of New York. He probably will have like 5 Manhattans. No, he deserves all of the Manhattan drinks. There is a certain comfort in that. There are no monsters here, just busy men. Probably fathers, eager to get home to their wives and children. And so your thoughts return to the naked form of the child. You pull over the side of the road in a quiet place before resting your forehead on the handlebars. Take a new series of deep breaths and try to regain full control of your body. How the hell is that even possible? You want to ask yourself what you have done wrong to deserve this experience, but there are too many valid answers crowding your mind, so much so that your throat tightens in a deadly grip as your eyes glaze over with tears. You cannot do this alone. You don't know how many people in Manhattan, you don't know many people in Manhattan, but you have a few trusted friends. You need to talk to someone before your head explodes and you go mad. Oh, this is cool. You got a nice map of Manhattan. Colin or I'd confide in Colin first, since he's the first friend. There's the police station where Colin Wright, your friend and informant, works. He would certainly listen to your story, but would he believe it? This is really cool. I like this. Feels like I'm playing some kind of weird mix of like a noir Lovecraft horror. I like it. Excuse me, I was drinking some water. Act 1, Cities of Secrets and Shadows, New York, 12th of February, 1927. It is getting darker, but Fifth Avenue is as busy as ever. You drive past the police headquarters where your informant, Colin Wright, works, and as far as you can tell from the outside, it doesn't seem to be very busy. You find a car park in a short distance away and slump into your seat for a moment, thinking hard about what to do. Colin is not the only person who passes on otherwise confidential news to you within the police force, but he is also the best friend you have found since you arrived in New York. After all, you saved his life, or at least suffered a very serious injury for him, and he remembers that very well. That's why you trust him to know he'll listen to your story without blinking an eye. While you are still trying to think of the right words, you notice a policeman sticking a flyer on a lamppost. The rain stops for a few minutes, and you can make out a tiny figure on the paper. Your heart skips a beat, and a sinking feeling creeps into your mind. But you wait for the officer to walk away before you open the door and step out, your body protesting vehemently, still aching from the accumulated tension. You look at the flyer for a long time and breathe a sigh of relief. It is a report of a missing child, but the one picture looks very small indeed. 1, 2 years old at most. It's certainly not the same one you saw being torn apart by the monster. But as soon as you start to read the inscriptions on the paper, your eyes open wide. Among the various characteristics of the child printed on the paper, his age stands out. 4 years old. The photograph is obviously old. Today the child must be older. And this knowledge weighs heavily on your mind as you try to reconstruct the features of that defenseless little body, abandoned in a pool of blood, on the smiling drawing of the child on the poster. Nope, don't check it yet. At the bottom of the poster you find the address of the family, that at the time of his disappearance he was wearing a blue suit and black trousers, no coat or hat, and that the only distinguishing feature was a small scar on his lip. You try to convince yourself that this is a coincidence. After all, there are many children who disappear every day in New York. Children of illegal immigrants, children abandoned by their own mothers, or unwitting victims of a settling of scores. And this child was from Brooklyn, a long way from the old shack on Riker Avenue. And yet, despite your best efforts, you can't shake the thought that this couldn't have just been a coincidence. You look at the entrance to the station and study it for a long moment. You and Colin have been exchanging information under the table for almost a year now, and you have your rituals, your favorite place to chat, away from the prying eyes of his colleagues. However, this is an emergency. You cannot wait until your next meeting. But you also know that if his superiors found out about your little arrangement, your friend would most likely lose his job, if not worse. You also have no idea if he is on duty that night. Billy Gaffney, 4-year-old, blue eyes, light complexion and brown hair. At the time of his disappearance, around 5:30 5:30 p.m. on 11th of February, 1927. He was wearing blue jodhpurs. What the fuck are those? A gray shirt, socks, and black shoes. I fear he may be the child I saw being eaten on Riker Avenue. Oh, this is really something. This is... Whew. I'm feeling some dread on this. This is good. Once inside, you are hit by the hot, stale air of the place. A collection of uniformed human bodies darting from side to side, while your ears are assaulted by a myriad of voices talking over each other, trying to get through the constant ringing of telephones. A New York Central Police Station on Fifth Avenue, the beating heart of justice in the Big Apple, which, to continue with that fine metaphor, would be a nest of maggots slowly eating away at it, given the high level of corruption among the agents. I've never had first-hand experience of this, but it's all first-hand accounts. Now you have to decide what to do. Making a complaint in the normal way, or the first available policeman would not risk exposing your relationship with Colin. After all, no matter how upset you are, this is still infanticide. On the other hand, you've seen something you can't yet digest, and perhaps only Colin wouldn't think you're crazy. You could look for him among the police officers and pretend to meet him by chance, hoping to look as natural as possible. You have never tried your hand at acting. Go after Colin. As you walk, you keep an eye out for the uniformed men who pass you by, hoping for a lucky break. There seems to be no sign of your friend. However, in that hellish confusion you have just slipped into seems to want to crush you into a claustrophobic maze with no way out. Then, as if from some unknown corner of purgatory, you see your friend emerge from the crowd. With great strides, Colin crosses the meters that separate you, avoiding his colleagues with a mastery that is almost unbelievable, all the while keeping a steady, rebellious gaze fixed on you. He greets you very formally, shakes your hand, and gives you a very insincere smile. "Ah, it's you. Please follow me. I'll take your complaint as we agreed yesterday." He puts a hand on your shoulder to lead you to his desk, squeezing a little harder than you would have expected, making you jump. Are you out of your mind?" He growls in a low voice so that only you can hear him in the midst of the carnage. Within moments, you arrive at your destination, a cubicle filled with paperwork, files, and unprecedented amounts of notes of all kinds, all spilled on one side of the tables near the entrance to the police station. "Give me all the details." The man sits at his desk, maintaining a formal tone even though no one is paying attention. "Well, You find yourself muttering softly, not quite sure what to say. Despite all the minutes you have taken to prepare a convincing speech, the words refuse to leave your tongue, blocked by something unseen that constricts your throat and leaves you gasping for air. Finally, with a great effort of will, you manage to get a few more words out. "I saw something terrible. I think a child was killed." Colin's eyes widen for a moment before he returns to staring at the complaint form to be filled in. The realization of the words you have just spoken hits you with the force of a speeding car. It's as if you have just made real what you saw in that hovel on Riker Avenue. It wasn't real before, just an image burned into your mind. But now it feels like the fire is actually burning. So, as you said, this friend of yours refuses to return the books you lent him some time ago. I see. In fact, it amounts to theft. With this false statement, Colin rescues you from the abyss you created by your words in a tone of voice high enough to discourage any agent with a fine ear. On the other hand, no one cares much about skirmishes between old friends, do they? You nod a little strangely while the other notes your data on the sheet with the mechanical precision of someone who's used to do this many times. "Did you park nearby?" He suddenly mumbles so quietly you can barely hear him. You nod again and tell him where you parked your car. "Give me 15 minutes and I'll join you," he says flatly, and then returns to a more formal tone in which you can even detect a hint of annoyance, as if the detective manages to identify himself perfectly within the officers on duty, who is forced to listen to the whining of yet another ball breaker, irritated by this or that equally annoying person. Well, we will see what we can do. Goodbye. With a handshake, you walk out of the station and quickly make your way to your car. Colin opens the door of your car and gets into the passenger seat. You couldn't help noticing how cautious he was about this simple action, almost as if he expected to be spied on. Something you think he's exaggerating a bit. Sometimes you think he's exaggerating a bit, but maybe it's just professional deformation. Without saying a word, he waves you off, and you start your car and dive into Manhattan's evening traffic under a downpour that doesn't seem to want to stop. The two of you remain silent for a while. You have been in this situation before, where your friend waits until he is far enough away from his place of work to be comfortable with the conversation. You sigh with a vein of irritation, as if to remind yourself that the station is a long way away and you have been circling for a few minutes now. You said you saw a child killed. Tell me everything. His eyes are full of anticipation, and you can see why. Colin is a family man with 2 young children, so it is not surprising that the news seems almost personal to him. Come to think of it, one of the things his superiors often accuse him of is getting too emotionally involved in the cases he follows. Not that you think that it's a bad thing. So you take a deep breath. Wait. Not that you think that is a bad thing. So you take a deep, calm breath. Remember the junkyard on Riker Avenue? He nods. He knows exactly what it's about. He was the one who passed on the information about the place. I was there today. I saw a child in that shack. I don't know if he was dead or alive, but he was in bad shape. Very bad. There was blood everywhere. God, if only I could get that scene out of my mind. Colin remains silent for a long time, watching your trembling hands on the wheel. You wouldn't know it at first glance, but he's a very tactful man, and also very sensitive. He's shown that to you many times. I can only imagine the horror you must have felt when you came across such a scene. We have John Mahoney's profile, but I must admit I never thought he'd be such a monster. Not least because I know for a fact that he's out of town, as I told you. He takes another long pause, massaging the root of his nose with his fingers, as if trying to collect his thoughts on what he had just heard. I don't know. It must have been some kind of revenge. They must have killed that little boy to get back at someone. If only we had some proof. I have them. I found fake That's a stray L. I have them. I found fake plates on the shed next to the house. That should be enough to arrest him. But that's not all, Colin. There's more. I fear the child I saw was William Gaffney. The policeman wrinkles his nose and frowns, one of his classic expressions of concern. All of Brooklyn is in an uproar over his disappearance. Are you sure you don't get that? Are you sure you don't get that impression? I mean, the picture of the flyer is old and, I might add, useless. And besides, Queens isn't exactly around the corner. A lot of kids go miss... I know what you're going to say. I've thought about it too. But the one I saw die in that house was the same age, and the same time coincided. He sighs and shakes his head. It seems obvious to you that at this moment he wants you to stay calm and think about it, to show you that you are making a mistake, but you know what you have seen. I found items matching Gaffney's on Riker Avenue. Colin looks at you again, and this time you notice a shadow of awe and understanding on his face. That wasn't there before. He's a policeman. It's obvious that he needed something to concrete to give your testimony a chance. After all, he's been used to collecting useless complaints and took me a second to read that one. Mythematic tales every week for years. He looks at you, waiting for further explanations. There was a barrel near the shed with burnt material in it. I found bits of blue and gray cloth, which I read were colors of the clothes Gaffney was wearing when he disappeared. I got the impression that this was done to get rid of some evidence. I understand, but it could have been any other dress, or curtain, or... There's more. I also found slippers buried nearby. I'm no expert, but I think they would fit the foot of a 4-year-old child. Colin doesn't say anything this time, and he's cruel. and he's cruel, evidently analyzing everything you're telling him. I mean, I appreciate your rationality, my friend, but all this in the bloody place where a child of the same age as the missing one was killed so soon after? The policeman sighs and stares out of the window for a few moments, as if counting the drops of water breaking on the glass. In his eyes, however, you can see that glimmer of excitement you have come to know. He thinks he has a real case on his hands. You're right. It's too odd. Colin frowns and mutters something thoughtful. William Gaffney. You say nothing, but you notice your friend is using the same arguments as you. You know he is still not convinced. In fact, he's not convinced at all. But he is seriously giving you the benefit of the doubt, which is what you would expect him to do. All right. What do you say we get back to it? Mahoney must still be out of town. Let's see what we can find out about reality. The thought of going to Riker Avenue so soon after meeting the monster sends a chill down your spine and your stomach clenches. Your first reaction would be to shout a sharp "No!" or ask Colin to call for reinforcements. But all you can do is nod and turn to head back to that cursed place. Probably the right thing to do. Also the most dangerous. On the last stretch of road, Colin advises you to turn off your headlights, just in case. And you obey. As soon as the spot where you parked the car first time appears, you repark almost mechanically, but not without a certain amount of unease. It almost seems as if you are retracing your own steps again. And maybe this time the monster will really catch up with you. You shake your head as you turn off the engine and look at the policeman, trying to take comfort in his presence. At least this time you are not alone, and your companion has 6 shots in the chamber. Oh, we're back here. Oh, we're back. Oh, wow. I was expecting a bit more to happen between. You both get out of the car, now that the rain has finally stopped, and move with extreme caution. Everything is dark around you, but the cloudy sky provides enough light for you to move between the car wrecks without stumbling. Colin looks at the dilapidated house, shrouded in darkness, and listens. You do the same, but hear nothing from inside. You can't shake the fear that the creature is hiding somewhere, and your heart beats wildly as you approach the house. Just then, your friend pulls out a torch. The beam of light pierces the dark and blinds you for a moment. You flinch and whisper to Colin in a low voice, afraid someone might hear you. I didn't realize you brought that thing with you. Let's just say it was left in my hand after the rounds. You want me to set fire to a piece of wood? I can't see a thing around here, and I'm pretty sure nobody's home. Let's go in, but stay alert. You approach the building, and he lights up the ground in front of you. The porch creaks slightly as you step onto it to face the entrance of the house, and at the slightest touch of the policeman's hand, the door opens in front of you. A narrow corridor opens up before you, lit only by the torchlight. Contrary to what you might expect, the entrance is quite clean, and the walls appear to be freshly painted in white. Suddenly, the old floor creaks beneath their feet, followed by Colin's muted cursing, though there are no sounds to indicate that others are listening. Colin is quite scrupulous in searching from room to room, and you stand beside him, almost clinging like a brat to his mother's skirt. As much as you already know perfectly well what you will find in those rooms, you shudder at the thought of what might lurk in the last one. The light from the torch illuminates the collapsed inner staircase as your friend lingers for a moment. You can't get through here. Maybe we can try the outside balustrade when it comes out. You lose yourself in the shattered, you lose your shelf in... Not lose your shelf in the music the moment you own it. You better never let it go. Hold on. Sorry. You lose yourself in the shattered and torn steps, imagining for a moment the beast leaping across the entire floor of the one above, or the entire floor to the one above. In the process, you lose focus on your feet, which stumble awkwardly over something abandoned on the floor. You hiss inappropriately as you bend down to pick up the object that nearly knocked you onto the floor. A book. Colin, who is illuminating the first room on the right, immediately turns to you and points his torch at you. The beam of light immediately reveals the simple cross stamped on the cover, and a quick glance at the first few pages confirms your suspicion. A Bible? What the hell is it doing in the middle of the corridor? What the hell are you doing? Didn't you see it outside? This place is worse than a dump. Watch your step. Follow me. Wait, Colin. There's something strange about this book. There's stains and... Colin literally snatches the tome from your hands, then opens it and shines his own torch through it. You both immediately notice that some of the pages are marked in several places by various pencil writings. But the policeman immediately gasps as he rubs his fingers over what at first glance appears to be a hole between the pages. Jesus. Without adding anything, the detective removes the light beam from the Bible, stuffs it into his uniform pocket, and continues his inspection of the scene. You, on the other hand, promise to ask him to look at it when you get back to the car. You have never seen your friend react like this, and you do not want this clue to end up in the police's files, from where it will never return. You enter the narrow hallway, which is overlooked by a couple of doors. In the one on the left, there is only a moldy sofa and a shabby coffee table, a remnant of a time when someone actually lived in this house. The first room, on the right, on the other hand, opens to an empty space with only a chair in one corner. Finally, you come to the last small room. A room that in itself gives a feeling of claustrophobia, made worse by the fact that it is full of junk stacked on top of each other. Without saying a word, you instinctively point to the spot where you remember seeing the child's motionless body, imagining that you will find its remains. But when the light illuminates the ground, there are no shreds of flesh or severed limbs. In a way, you feel relieved, but you can already imagine Colin starting to rant about how you made it all up. Instead, the policeman remains silent and bows to the ground. There's something here. Traces of blood. Do you believe me now? He sighs, not quite knowing what to say. The situation is obviously strange, but again, you put yourself in his skin and realize that he would need something more concrete. The blood doesn't even look old, but the first thing that comes to mind is that this was a settling of scores, maybe. Don't you think there's still enough to get Mahoney arrested? He must know something about it. The policeman nods and seems quite convinced. You know what? Gaffney or not, I've been on this case for far too long, so yes, I'll make do with that blood and try to squeeze out as much information as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I risk seeing my daughter get married before that jerk ends up in jail. By now, I even dream about those stolen cars at night. So you leave the shack, much to your relief. It is about to rain again, but your friend has not forgotten the upper floor. And as you watch with... Really? Had to give me a weird notification there. Sorry, phone buzzed. But your friend has not forgotten the upper floor, and you watch as, with an agility you did not expect, he places his feet on the railing and lifts himself up to the roof. He points his torch at you and tells you to wait there, so you can see the light shining into the rooms you have not visited. You approach the porch, resting a hand on one of the wooden pillars supporting the sloping roof. Only after a few moments do you realize that you are holding your breath, waiting to hear something from up there. Your mind conjures up horrifying scenarios of your friend's heart-breaking screams breaking the silence of the night, but you banish those visions and cling even tighter to the column. To relieve the anxiety, you try to think of the next steps. First, the Bible, and second, Mahoney. All you have to do is wait for the police to arrest him. After a few minutes, you hear Colin descend with a thud and approach calmly, allowing you to breathe a sigh of relief. Nothing. I'm a bit disappointed, but then again, it doesn't look like anyone's been up there for ages. There was such a layer of dust that it felt like London in fog, given the amount of gray it was. You get into the car and drive back to Manhattan, but the thought of that book continues to haunt you. You still can't help but stare at it as Colin holds it in his lap, one hand resting on the cover. Then you work up the courage to ask what you have been thinking about for so long. Do you mind if I take it? I'd like to have a look at it. Then I'll give it back to you before you make the arrest. You don't need it to frame Mahoney, do you? The policeman snorts and turns the object back over in his hands. All right, keep it. Honestly, it's more important to have found those bloodstains and, well, as usual, you've shown good instinct. Better than most of my agents. Let's do this the usual way. If you find out anything interesting, let me know, and I'll let you know when I get back to Riker Avenue anyway. That way, just in case, you'll get it back to me sooner. Riker Avenue Bible. The black covered Bible found on Riker Avenue. It looks quite worn, so I imagine it is read often. To be honest, I've never met anyone who reads the Bible a lot, but I do know that the Book of Numbers is a particularly good remedy for insomnia. As far as I could see, however, it is the King James Bible, so the processor should belong to the It's a King James Bible, so the processor should belong to the Episcopal Church, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. You are finally home. It seems unreal that you have finally reached your apartment at the end of such a crazy and dangerous day. Your one-bedroom apartment is far from luxurious, and in some ways you never really felt that it belongs to you. You've lived there for a few years now, but it's as if something temporary until you can go back to Boston or find a new job and a new life somewhere else. You have no idea. This thought grips you every time you cross the threshold, but you can find no peace for this torment. The only touches of you are the art books carefully arranged on the wall shelf and a small painting of you with Margaret hanging in the bedroom. Even that only weighs on your heart. You will never get used to how much your life has changed in such a short time, and how much pain it has caused you. Maybe you should just throw the picture away, but you can't. With an automatic, almost ritualistic gesture, you fill a glass of water on the sink and pour it into the vase of daisies you keep on your desk during the day. You watch the flowers slowly wilt. Their beautiful white petals are beginning to show the brown spots that herald their fading. You don't have the time to lose yourself in the melancholy that grips your heart each time you return, because as soon as you put your things on your desk, you feel something rubbing against your leg, making you start. With all that has happened, you had almost forgotten that one comforting element in this house. Pluton, your black cat, is looking at you with one eye as he continues to torment your leg and meow persistently. You've been gone too long, and now he's really hungry. You must not have found any mice or birds in the street today. You, on the other hand, have no appetite. So what you do is open the tin of meat and divide it in half, putting one half in the bowl and the other half on a slice of bread. It's not that it's strange for you to eat this way, as your accomplices are short of time and your salary is mostly used to pay the rent. Having to split food with your pets because most of your money's going to rent. That certainly is something that I'm glad is a thing of the past, right? Right? Just kidding. So, Pluton. This one-eyed cat, given to me by a neighbor as soon as I arrived in New York, has been my faithful companion for the past few years. His presence makes life in my apartment much more bearable, and sometimes I feel that he takes care of me as much as I take care of him. Aww. As you chew, you watch Pluton swallow the last bite. As Pluton swallows the last bite, glances at the window you always leave half open for him, and then decides he would rather be with you than go out. He jumps into your arms and starts making pasta. Making pasta, doing the kitty presses. That's cute. Makes pasta while the sounds of his purring spread through the air. You pet his head. You pet his head with your fingertips, and he immediately squints his eyes with a funny, blissful expression. He even lifts his muzzle a little as if he wants to ask you to continue endlessly. You are left with a mixture of dust, dirt, and what appears to be bits of green painted on your fingers. You sigh and look at it again. Look how dirty you are. Where have you been today? Like all male cats, Pluton is a globetrotter and cannot help but go out every day to explore. But he always comes home. He's incredibly loyal to you and never fails to show his affection. With something in your stomach and the cat on your lap, you finally look at the annotated book you managed to bring home from Riker Avenue. It looks like an ordinary Bible, the kind sold cheaply and found everywhere, in homes and hotel rooms. The header of the first page reads, Authorized Version, indicating that the owner is a member of the Episcopal denomination. What's an Episcopal denomination? I'm gonna look that up, because I do not know any of this stuff. Genuinely. Episcopal. Oh. The Episcopal Church, based in the United States with additional Dioceses? Okay, so, yeah, it's a denomination of Christianity. Okay. So it's an American version. Interesting. Because I know there's, like, different versions, like, of reprints of the Bible. I know that much, I just didn't know what episcopal means. Leaving it on the table, you begin to leaf through it. Immediately, Pluton jumps off your legs and stands over the book, preventing you from reading and staring at you with one eye. He has a look of curiosity and fear that you can't explain. The cat seems to be really wanting me to not read. I want to read it. You pick up the cat under the armpits and put him on the floor, even though he meows in protest and starts to whip his tail here and there as if to ward off annoying insects. But then, instead of walking away in annoyance, he sits down where you put him and continues to stare at you as if waiting for something. As soon as you start flipping through the Bible, a sense of unease envelops you. Many of the pages are marked with pencil lines, indicating a whole series of passages that, for the owner, must have had a certain importance. In fact, a lot of importance, considering how determined and marked the handwriting is. But that's not the strangest thing. Many pages have small holes in several places, as if they had been penetrated by very thin needles, and all the holes are surrounded by strange rust-colored stains which almost struggle to be seen on the yellow of the pages. You immediately think of the most obvious thing: blood. How did it get there? Whose is it? In particular, you notice a point in Genesis marked and pierced several times as if it were of great importance. Perhaps it's a hallucination, but the stains on those lines seem fresher. The text narrates the moments when Abraham is about to sacrifice his son Isaac as commanded by the Lord. In the margin, in small handwriting, you read, "I must offer a child in sacrifice to purify myself from sins, iniquities, and abominations in the eyes of God." Your head begins to spin as if the vision has delivered the coup de grace to your already overworked mind. You fall back in on your chair, barely finding the strength to close the book to spare yourself the horrible sight, and feel nausea rising in your stomach. You notice that Pluton has not stopped staring at you for a moment, so barely smiling at him more to encourage yourself than him, you get up and head for the bedroom. You feel really exhausted after this day. The second-hand gramophone that you managed to pick up at a bargain price sits on the coffee table, staring at you as if it were inviting you to relax with its music. But no, you don't have the strength to do anything other than throw yourself onto your bed. As you approach the mattress, your strength fails you and you fall back onto it. You feel the blood pounding in your temples like a drum. Then you barely manage to grab the sheets and pull them over you. You probably have a fever. That wouldn't be surprising considering what you've been through. Could all this really have been the result of an illness? What if it was a delusion? Or your head hurts too much. Before you close your eyes, you take one last look at the picture of you and Margaret, and your breathing becomes even harder. You sink your head into your pillow and try to let go of all these thoughts to finally find peace and sleep. The warmth of the spring sun caresses your face as the grass brushes against your fingertips, tickling you pleasantly. You don't know what's taking Margaret so long. In fact, you can't even remember what she's doing. But deep down, you're glad to have some time alone with Daisy. In fact, it might be time to see where she's gone. You get up reluctantly and begin to stroll through this garden surrounded by luxuriant shrubs, under the heroic and pompous gaze of the classical statues, which almost seem to condemn your listless laziness, as if they had never known the sweet tranquility of an afternoon spent relaxing with their families. The whole place is filled with the sweet scent of roses, lilacs, and honeysuckle. Not that you're a botanical expert, but Margaret had always had a green thumb, which has served you well in painting some of your favorite landscapes. After passing the statue of a young Bacchus, mutilated in his unteenth celebration of alcohol and carnal pleasure, you find your little Daisy not far from an armless, ivy-covered Venus. She seems to be picking flowers, so you stop to watch her, not daring to disturb her moment of serenity. You stay there, silent, until your daughter stands up, clutching a bunch of daisies to her chest. Although you don't seem to have seen them in your garden, The little girl doesn't seem to notice you, gazing dazedly at the horizon, her eyes veiled with an emotion you can't interpret, but which could wipe out your happiness with a flick of the wrist. Then you turn your attention back to the daisies, at least until a dark silhouette looms above you, the shadow of a man you don't recognize. You don't know how, but you are certain that no one else should be in this place, and yet this strange icy presence covering your daughter's sunshine pervades you with a deep sense of unease. As if captivated by this presence, the young girl begins to walk away, past the flower meadow, and towards a strange ruin that you hadn't noticed before. It appears to be some kind of ruined chapel, a structure that has little to do with the pastoral setting of the garden. You try to focus your gaze on this little shrine, but it is as if something escapes you each time, as if the chapel suddenly finds itself in a world that rejects it with every little particle of it. It is then that you notice the strange stones that make up its architecture, so perfectly aligned that there is only a single sharp crack between them, almost as if the whole place were held by a strange infinite space that were never filled in, rather than by the solid rock that piled up violently to try and cover those cracks in the horizon of things. The twisted cross that stands at the top of the chapel has arms that seem capable of piercing the sky and making it bleed, as their wooden contours meet in the central bolus. Bolus? I think bolus. A crossroads that has no definite beginning or end, a chasm that contains itself the perfect apposition of two perpendicular lines. I just noticed something there. At the center of the blasphemous sanctuary, a great silhouette, indescribable forms, awaits your Daisy. You know it, and it frightens you. Daisy, stay close. You freeze. She turns to you and she smiles. She then resumes her stride towards the ruin. It is enough to snap you forward, ready to follow her and protect her from whatever awaits her beyond the threshold of those arches, under the vaults of that chapel, so little more immaculate than reality, so extraordinarily little more perfect. You pull up to the porch and peer into the huddled darkness beyond the door Daisy had plunged into, the light only briefly reaching the floor of the building, which is made of planks that look like dirt. You come closer as your heart beats wildly, telling you to plunge into the darkness to retrieve your little one, while your brain screams to be careful. Only then do you notice that the mud on the wood has the strange shape of horses' hooves, placed in masses as if a horse or donkey had danced in the temple in some kind of blasphemous ritual. A tiny silhouette emerges from the darkness, very different from the eerie presence that had so enchanted Daisy. It is a child of your daughter's age, and even though he remains in the dim light, you recognize him as the one from Riker Avenue. You cannot make out his features, but you are sure it is him. His appearance is not substantial, but translucent and pale, like a blurred photograph. And behind him, a large figure looms, that stretched out head and those huge claws that you'll never forget. It's the shadow of the monster. Before you have time to react, it turns and becomes smaller, taking the form of a grown man. So this creature is really a man and not just a beast? The child opens its lips as if it is about to say something. But just then, something comes between you and him. Suddenly bursting from earth like lightning, the tiny creature arched its back menacingly, puffing up its fur in an attempt to intimidate you, while its feline breath pierced your ears, forcing you to back away. Pluton? The cat stares at you, and only then do you notice that it has both eyes, both green, speckled and deep. It blocks your path. Jesus, this sound design is really good. Whew. It blocks your path, scratching the floor with its claws, while the child and the man behind it dissolve without a trace. And in your perception, Daisy becomes increasingly distant and unreachable, a blurry silhouette against the thing that inhabits the ruins of the sanctuary. You want to run towards her and prevent her from reaching her destination, but Pluton suddenly starts meowing, a sound that shatters your eardrums and forces you to your knees, gasping in pain. You shout, but that the sound does not stop. Fuck. That was a bad nightmare. You ran out of your flat and down the stairs in twos. Twos? I think in twos, risking a dramatic fall. No, it is twos. It is twos. I forgot to read the number, how to read the number 2. Wow, this is what no hydration does to you people. God damn it. Contrary to your daily routine, you did not hear the alarm clock as you were lost in those deep, tormenting dreams. Even Pluton did not jump into bed to look for food that morning. And you even noticed that he had already climbed out of the window you always leave open. You step out into the street and you are greeted with by the comforting coolness of the morning and the smell of smog from the cars whizzing through the streets of Manhattan. As you get into your car, this is some sublime gothic writing here. It's pretty good, Ice. Like, also, hey, welcome. I'm playing, God damn it, what was the title again? It was, Omen... Wow, I'm a terrible streamer. I forgot my game names. Should be on my installed list, on my library. Give me a second. I've been so enraptured by the story. How did I forget the game's name as soon as I fucking played it? Hold on. Hold on. Omen Exitio. Exitio. Not exiting. Omen Exitio Hunger. And the general synopsis, to catch people up to speed, I'm playing as a journalist investigator who went to go investigate some car thefts where somebody takes stolen cars to a location, forges license plates, paints the cars a different color, then sells them back at a premium. And this takes place in the 1920s. So, yeah. And we saw some shit that caused some fucking nightmares for our poor guy. So we learned some backstory, learned that there was apparently a missing kid that got devoured by a monster. We have a one-eyed cat. We're friends with a police officer who we kind of have an under-the-table trading situation with. And we just also read a really messed up looking Bible. So, fun stuff in the 1920s. You step out into the street, are greeted with the comforting coolness of Manhattan. As you get into your car and start the engine, you realize that, despite the unpleasant night, you feel much more rested. It is obvious that most of your sleep was peaceful, disturbed only by the scenes that are still so vivid in your mind. However, the light of day seems to dispel these memories, and somehow you feel even more determined to shed light on the shocking events of the previous day. You park not far from the headquarters of the newspaper where you work, the New York Gazette, a large, anonymous building that has become your second home. Or first, considering how much time you spend there. As soon as you cross the threshold, you are greeted by the sounds that you have come to know so well as they are now part of your daily routine. The bustle of colleagues, the rustling of papers, and the incessant ticking of typewriters. People you pass either greet you politely or simply ignore you. You don't have any particular problem with any of them, but you know what they say about you. An unknown who has signed an article in a very short time with his own name, practically without doing any groundwork, and that's because you're the editor's favorite. So yeah, so before our character was an investigative journalist, he was a painter that lived with his wife and daughter, but his daughter died, and then his wife died, and he moved to New York from Boston and got a job at the newspaper, made friends with a police officer, and that's how we are. That's how the story went up till now. You hurry to the door of Thurber's office next to the desk of his secretary, a woman of Italian and Asian descent, one of those Conaby? What is that word? I've never seen that word before. Huh. What does that mean? Is that a 20s thing? There's a lot of vernacular here that I'm not familiar with. Conaby definition. What is... But yeah, it's kind of like Gothic 20s, which is honestly really cool. Referring to the marriage of a married... Huh. Odd. Alright. It's just another word for marriage. One of those Konobe that only America can produce. She is quite young and pretty, and since you have been in New York, you have tried several times to ask her out, always receiving a mighty 2 in spades. In any case, hope springs eternal. Good morning, Lily. Is Edward in the office, or did I miss him? You're in luck. It's come out right now. Another interview about the sex thing. Again? But it's been almost a year now with all this bickering about the play. I'm surprised he hasn't had enough of it by now. Oh, you know how it is, defending art in all its forms from those who do not understand its true value, etc., etc. We all know that he would rather be a critic than a journalist, or an art history teacher. He is turning the newspaper into a kind of daily insert of art in America and elsewhere. Come on, don't exaggerate. I mean, yes, he's a bit fixated, but he's always very thorough. I guess that's a virtue in our line of work. Right, I'll catch up with him. Go to Thurber. Yeah, we saw some fucked up shit. We need to go to Thurber. Once inside, you find your boss in the middle of a phone call, which must have stopped him just as he was about to leave. As he already has his coat on, he looks at you for a moment and smiles, then waves for you to wait. Yes, darling, I understand. I'll get the chicken for lunch, but I really must go now. They're waiting for me, and I have to talk to Richard first. Yes, I'll say goodbye to him. 20th dictionary be putting in the work. Yeah, the writers are doing a really good job of making this feel pretty authentic. He gestures to the chair where you sit, as you have done countless times since he first suggested you work for him as a journalist after Margaret's disappearance, and your move to the big city. You don't ever take off your coat, sure that your conversation will last very little. Also, it's very interesting that they write disappearance instead of death here. Is that another quirk of the 20s dictionary, that they replaced the word death with disappearance? Because we're given the description in the backstory with how our guy's family life was and how it and everything that happened, but here they're referring to it as a disappearance, which might be a 20s thing, yeah. Okay, so I'll see you when I get back. Usual time. Yeah. Your friend slams his hand down hard on the desk, startling you. His voice is now much louder than usual, but this does not worry you too much. You have seen scenes like this before, especially when you're having dinner at Thurber's house. I said I'll get him the bloody chicken. You don't have to repeat it at the end of every goddamn sentence I say. What? What do you mean I forgot? That was literally once in 30 years, and you keep throwing it in my face every single day. You know what? I'll have some fish. At least that'll give you something to really complain about. Excuse me, I have to go. Yeah. Have a nice day. He hangs up violently, shakes his head, rubs his temples with his fingers, and closes his eyes as if to regain his lost composure. You watch as he tries to stop the smile from forming on his lips, knowing he doesn't appreciate having to make such a scene in public. And so, without even sitting down, he lets out a sigh and regains his usual calm tone. Trouble in paradise? Thinkest thou that I, who saw the face of God, that tasted the eternal joys of heaven, am not tormented with 10,000 hells in being deprived of everlasting bliss? O Faustus, leave these frivolous demands which strike a terror to my fainting soul. Shakespeare? No corpse, no concrete proof, at least in the 20s. Yeah, literally, the police officer that our main guy's a friend with came with us to the house that we investigated to find more concrete proof, because as far as I know, they didn't have a what's it called again? The department of the police that deals with like finding prints and chemical stuff. Oh fuck, what's it called? It wouldn't be processing. Colloquially called the lab. in a lot of, like, fiction. What's it called again? There's a science word for it, and it's been so long. Point is, they didn't have the sciences to really, narrow a lot of things down, so a lot of it was very on ground. Thurber raises his eyes to the ceiling and lets out a long sigh. Marlowe. At least you didn't mistake him for scrambled wives like she did. She was so beautiful when she was young, but now she's gotten old and... Damn. Never mind. I hope you've got good news for me on the car recycling thing. Yes, I have. Yes, I have what we need. In a shed next to the house I was led to, I found fake number plates. I already called the police, but at least you'll get the exclusive you wanted. Anyway, I admit I am not here for that, but to ask you to give me a new investigation. I was thinking of the one about the child who disappeared the day before yesterday. Yeah? How come? Thurber, Faust Mother Floater. Have you read it? I have not read it. You're saying it for Thurber. Yeah, he would say that. Well, so the deal is that we went to the house because this John Mahoney guy... Okay, so this is Lillian. Thurber's secretary is a rather energetic and very beautiful girl with a very bad temper. I know that her mother's from Florence, Italy, and was married to a Japanese businessman who abandoned her when Lily was a child. Perhaps this is why she's a very stubborn person who always has something to say about everyone. No wonder she has been nicknamed Sister Lily around the newsroom. Better not let her know. Forensics! Thank you! I was like, it started with an F. Thank you, Ice. That was gonna bug the shit out of me. Forensics. Oh. Thank you. That was legitimately gonna bother me for the rest of the night. So, yeah, we went to this house to find missing license plates and evidence to use against this guy, who did a lot of laundering, but then started doing car thefts for what I was talking about earlier, which was painting them fake plates, then resell them for higher value. But then shit at this house got a little bit too real. And it seems I could do a little thing of connecting the Mahoney and the missing kid. Missing kid being Billy Gaffney, him. Sadly, we saw Billy get devoured by a monster, which was not a good sight. Pretty disturbing, in fact. But yeah, should I say it's personal, or should I say it's Mahoney? He's artistic. I think say personal. He frowns and squints at you more intensely, as if trying to understand whether you are joking or really admitting that you are investigating the child's disappearance because you are emotionally involved. You know that your friend does not approve of such things. Work must be passionate, he often says, but also logical and objective. You see him rubbing his chin, searching for the right words to tell you to let it go. I see what you mean. Don't think I'm heartless, but I never thought you were. You've always been there, all the time, even when I had to bury them both. You were the only one who held my hand in the darkest moments of my life. The only one who allowed me to start again. I could never have done it myself. You will have my gratitude as long as I live. You know that. Thurber sighs and lowers his eyes. Perhaps he didn't expect you to interrupt him so immediately and so emotionally. To let whatever recrementary speech, that's a new word, recrementary speech he had in his mind escaped his lips. And you weren't lying. What you said meant what you said, and he knows it. Don't get me wrong, I understand that you feel involved in this, Richard. Although I would like to understand exactly why. What happened at Daisy's is very different from what happened at the Gaffneys. But that's not the point. My friend, you should seriously think about moving on. It is not the first time he has told you this, and you know he is right. That you should leave everything behind without forgetting, just to live a little better, not to give in to the cynicism that seems to be becoming more and more characteristic of your personality every day. This experience has changed you, and you are no longer the boy in love of a few years ago. I can't say that I like this attitude of yours. In fact, I admit that it makes me very sad. But it's also true that this is the first time you've shown initiative, so I guess I'll have to accommodate you. Or I'll look like the one who clipped your wings, or wants to clip your wings. Just try not to get any more involved than you have to, Richard. William Gaffney is not Daisy. Remember that. As he speaks, Thurber opens a desk drawer and pulls out a folder on which he has written Gaffney File in his perfect handwriting. He looks at it for a moment to make sure everything is there, then hands it to you. You take a look at the flyer you saw taped to the lamppost last night. However unimportant he claims to be, Thurber has, as usual, been meticulous in retrieving everything about the affair. And it was just for a blurb. You have my blessing to pursue this matter, but you must write the article today. We are already too late. I appreciate these writers and their big word thesaurus. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, the writing in this is pretty good, I have to say. So if I were you, I'd talk to the people involved first. Just be careful, as I understand the Gaffney house is being staked out by the police to prevent onlookers from entering. What's the police view? Inspector Sullivan? Well, this Gaffney must have gone off on his own, but I don't know how much sense that version of events makes. There's this other child, William Betton, who says that the boogeyman took him away. However, he does not seem inclined to pay attention to such testimony. I suppose because it comes from a child. You nod, pick up your clipboard, and rise from your chair. Maybe you should thank him, but you know that pleasantries are often useless with Thurber. He is a lover of manners, but he appreciates results much more. You just smile and nod. You open the door and turn around one last time to see him picking up some papers from his desk before leaving. Oh, Edward? Remember the chicken. You leave the office with a cat-like snap as you hear a copy of yesterday's paper crash against the glass door. Lily winces for a moment, then looks up at you and rolls her eyes at the ceiling before returning to her typing as you walk away smiling. That's good. That's nice. Alright, there's good chemistry there. I like it. That's funny. The entrance to the Gaffney apartment building is swarming with people. It's not like Greta Garbo has suddenly appeared in a club. Greta Garbo? Who's Greta Garbo? Probably a 20-star. Greta Garbo. Movie star. What was she in? Oh. Wait! I think she's on the Swedish Currency! Yeah! Yeah, I remember when my dad and I went to Sweden for the winter. She was on on the Swedish kroner. Well, one of the Swedish kroner bills. That's fun. That's right. Yeah, cuz they have like celebrities on there, but we have presidents. That's fun. Okay, so she was in Ninochka, Queen Christina, Camille, Mata Harin, Grand Hotel, Anna Christie, and Flesh and the Devil. Those are what I'm seeing off the... Okay, so big movie star in the 20s. Good to know. Alright. But there's still a good crowd of people there to snoop around, or, in the case of your colleagues, to try and get an interview with the baby's parents. And you know they would do anything to get into that house and pester those poor people with questions. Luckily, there is a policeman who is on guard and the entrance and exit to the house, and he is apparently quite young. You step forward to get a better look at the situation, but the crowd is really intense. You estimate that there are nearly 30 of them, and even getting a little closer is problematic. A big guy, probably working on the canal, pushes you for more space. An old man with a gray mustache comes at you viciously, and a woman looking for some juicy gossip screams at you in a language you don't recognize when you accidentally bump into her. The first thing that comes to mind is that you can get a little insight into the situation by listening to what people are saying. A lot of your colleagues do that, it's true, but they tend to gather random information and then stitch it together to write an attention-grabbing piece, a practice Thurber has strictly forbidden all his staff to engage in. Oh, so... Oh, man, that's a... Alright, Thurber seems to have some journalistic integrity. I like that. The Gaffney's apartment is in a handsome 3-story red brick building at 99 15th Brooklyn. Not a prize-winning example of contemporary architecture, but better than Riker Avenue. Probably actually has plumbing. Everyone is talking about the Gaffney affair, and it is inevitable, but something catches your attention. It seems that last night the ambulance stopped in front of the building and a woman was taken away. So you approach a man who is talking about it, perhaps one of the neighbors. Hello, sir. I heard you talking about an ambulance. Can you tell me what happened? Well, I don't know much about it, but last night we saw Mrs. Beaton being put on a stretcher and the ambulance taking her away. Who knows what happened to her, poor thing. Maybe it was the fear of what her son, who was playing with the Gaffney was risking when... Did you happen to know where she was admitted? Huh? I think Prospect Heights Hospital. That's the closest. It was lucky the husband was home. The guy was already working. If that had happened when he was at the office, don't get me wrong, they are good people. You listen to him for a while longer as he tells you a little personal anecdote, vaguely related to the Beaton family. What really matters to you is the fact that their son was in the company of William Gaffney when he was kidnapped, as your editor-in-chief has mentioned to you. You promise yourself to visit the hospital if you can find the time. It could be useful for your research. If you are not mistaken, visiting hours are in the afternoon. We're in with the police in a sense. And the officer's young, so it means he probably would be a bit... I don't know. Drink a little water. A lot of reading. Not that I mind. I actually enjoy this. This is fun. Should I persuade the officer or look for somebody to get to the window? Let's persuade the officer. You push through the crowd to get to the entrance of the building. Again, you are pushed back and forth, collecting numbers of curses to which you pay little attention. Sublime metaphysical aesthetic, popular in Gothic era of literature, and regularly used to straddle in the line between reality and supernatural. Yeah, I also love the art in this. This is also really good. Like, it's just nice. Like, so the way that I found a lot of the demos that I'm going to be showcasing is, right now, at the time of me doing these streams, it is the Steam Next Fest, and for some reason the Steam Next Fest doesn't have a horror category on it, even though it's October. So somebody on Twitter was kind enough to collect a few interesting looking demos and have them be on a Twitter thread for us to check out later. So this was one of them. I've got a good amount of them thanks to that Twitter thread. So yeah, I'm very thankful I ran across that. Very thankful considering what I'm reading. This game gives me that vibe. Yeah, I'm getting that vibe too. It's a bit unnerving, but in like but in kind of like looking at a haunted drawing kind of way. Yeah, that's the way to put it. Eventually, you come to the policeman standing guard at the entrance, in full uniform and looking very attentively at the handful of rowdy intruders into the place he is supposed to protect. I agree with your opinion on the artwork, too. Yeah, like, if you've ever seen, like, the old 60s Scooby-Doo cartoon, I get the same feeling from a lot of these drawings as I would with those paintings that, like, have eyes that are tracking the gang. You know? Like, I'm getting that kind of energy. Like, I feel like something's gonna twitch here, and it's gonna scare the shit out of me. Only rat intruders into a place you're supposed to protect. You walk up the steps and he gives you a dirty look. It is obvious that no one has dared to come so close to him since he has been there. You can already see him wondering if you are a threat to his authority, and it can only make you smile. After all, now that you look at him more closely, he is little more than a recruit. One of those young policemen who still truly believe in their mission. Some, like Colin, stay that way all their lives, but they are a minority, which is why it can be hard to get in. Morning, officer. Do you live here? No. Then leave. He says He says it in a tone that is a little too loud, so much so that people around him only seem to notice that moment that you are talking to the policeman face to face. They start to shout. You need to resolve the situation as quickly as possible. It's never good for a reporter to be in the spotlight only to be beaten up or arrested by a kid with personality problems. Ow! No, that won't work. Federal agent? Agent? Agent. But that's a crime. I don't want to cause chaos. That's a little too much. Pretend to be Mrs. Gaffney's brother? No. If he's fresh, he probably won't take a bribe. I'm gonna probably go with the brother move. I think that's the right call. I mean, because we saw Billy Gaffney, so yeah, I guess this is our best choice. You shrug your shoulders and glance sideways at the clearly annoyed policeman. And the sound effects are basically doing the same thing as the eye tracking. Yep. You shrug your shoulders and glance sideways at the clearly annoyed policeman as you prepare to perform an operetta for which, if discovered, no one could deny you an arrest. After all, this is not the first time you've done this. You remember when you were first selling paintings on the street and when you had to invent a myriad of excuses for the policeman who came to check that you were not bothering passers-by, or for good measure, avoiding them. I don't live here, but I'm Mrs. Gaffney's brother. I came here to New York to see my sister and her family. He stares at you and inhales through his nose as if he's trying to stop himself from chasing you away. Show me your passport. You nod and begin to search your wallet in front of him to emphasize that you have nothing to hide. You hear Thubner's voice in your head of all the times he has told you to change your ID and especially to update it since you have been living in the city. However, your melancholy and your refusal to let go of the past have once again got the better of you. Lucky for you, you think. The policeman looks at the photo, nods a little too theatrically after confirming that the portrait is of you, only a few years younger, and begins to examine the various passport entries with an all too focused flair. He seems almost like a child playing detective, but one who wouldn't get anywhere with a real case. So, Richard Upton Pikeman? Ah, you're a painter, and you live in Boston. Can you tell me the address? You roll your eyes and without hesitation, tell him where your old house was. Imagine that he follows the instructions in the perfect policeman's handbook, which advises that anyone who presents a document in this way should be questioned to make sure that they have not stolen it. Imagine, too, that the hypothetical thief is stupid enough not to have looked at the document first in order to avoid such a trivial trap. Or illiterate, of course. Well, and tell me, when were you born? You also tell him your date of birth and huff and puff. However, he seems neither concerned about your impatience nor satisfied with the answer he has received, and this begins to puzzle you. Tell me, if you are really Mrs. Gaffney's brother, how come your name is Pikeman? Why do you think? It was because our father's surname. Or do you think my sister was called Mrs. Edmund Gaffney before she married my brother-in-law? No, of course I knew that. It was just a checkup. Just a standard routine. His eyes dart frantically from side to side as his mouth opens and closes nervously. Perhaps he is checking to see if there is any colleagues around who might have witnessed his faux pas, but fortunately for him, no one seems to have had to endure the embarrassing spectacle except you. So, with a rueful look, you reach out to him and get your passport back. Sure, here you go. Come on in. Mr. Pikeman. You walk down the corridor, checking your folder for any indications of which apartment belongs to the Gaffneys, and you discover that Thurber was even more meticulous than he let on. As usual, in fact, after just a minute, you find yourself knocking on one of the anonymous doors of the building, taking a deep breath to try and shake off the tension from the adventure you just experienced. Maybe you should really put less passion into what you do, or Thurber will start to believe that you really enjoy being a journalist. In reality, all you care about is finding out what happened to William Gaffney. And now comes the moment of truth. A visibly tired man, probably only a little older than you, opens the door. The first thing you notice is his really important nose. One of those things that would be the butt of a joke. But the sad eyes of Mr. Gaffney, as you imagine him to be, take away any desire to lighten the mood. In his dejected face, you can read all the pain a father can feel at the loss of his son. You have a pang in your heart, seeing yourself in that moment so similar to him. When he asks you who you are, you hesitate for a moment. Good morning, sir. My name is Richard Upton Pikeman. I'm a journalist with the New York Gazette. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm here to ask if you would be willing to answer some questions. The man sighs. There is no irritation in his attitude, only exhaustion, as if he has been involved in that scene an infinite number of times in the past few days, and you can well imagine that it is true. Who knows how many other journalists, most likely the same ones who are still besieging the building, have bothered him for the same reason. However, if your competitors have written articles about them, complete with photos, it's clear that the Gaffneys are not entirely resistant to talking about the incident with the media. You just have to find a way to convince them to do it once again. Drink some water. I have a strong feeling that it was, in fact, his son at the house, but the sad thing is that son got eaten by a monster. So, I mean, this is kind of true, because we saw the Gaffney missing poster on a lamppost and brought it up with our police friend to shed further light. So I'm gonna go with 2, because that's not wrong. I do work with Richard does work with a policeman. His expression becomes more relaxed, but he closes his eyes and breathes deeply. You have a bad feeling, as if he's preparing an excuse to get rid of you. But you haven't lied. Given the information you've shared with Colin, you've helped the police with their investigation in a way. But he seems to think otherwise. Listen, I don't want to be rude, but a lot of people have told me this. Almost all the journalists who were here yesterday. And to be honest, I never thought it was true. The police have told us to be careful who says these things. Now, excuse me, I have to go out. I'm not lying, Mr. Gaffney. I can't prove it officially, but the fact the guard let me in should be enough to confirm the sincerity of my words. He thinks about it for a moment, but seems to slowly convince himself. In fact, what you said is true. No one without authorization could enter the building. And besides, it's not necessary for him to know how you really got there. You'll have to tread carefully and hope he doesn't go to confirm with the police officer at the entrance. Edmund, who is it? A woman's voice, undoubtedly that of his wife, comes from inside. The husband moves slightly, allowing you to see part of the apartment. You have to squint to see through the darkness that surrounds it, for the heavy curtains are drawn to cover the windows, preventing the morning light from illuminating this cramped place. The air is still hot and stale, hitting you with a light and heavy caress at the same time. It almost seems as if time has stood still in this scene. The perfect subject for a munch painting, you think. Mr. Gaffney is sitting at the table, staring at you anxiously through her thick glasses, while two children are playing with some cloth and wooden toys on the floor, more or less ignoring your conversation. Maybe they've seen so many strangers pass by that they don't notice the people who knock at their door. A journalist who's here on behalf of the police. He wants to ask us a few questions. Please, come in. Don't stand at the door. If Sergeant Joseph sees you, we're both at your disposal. If Sergeant Joseph sent you, we're both at your disposal. Okay, but please, let's make this quick. I want to look for Billy with some colleagues. The information we gave the police is still the same. Don't worry, Mr. Gaffney. I'll be brief. I don't want to bother you with too many questions, believe me. I'm just here to help you understand what happened. You are led to the only table in the room, which doubles as a kitchen. The apartment is not much different in size from yours, but with an extra room that you find yourself thinking that the children are probably sleeping in a bedroom together. The woman asks if you want anything, but you smile and shake your head. Her husband stands next to her, then gestures to her older daughter to go play with her younger brother in the other room. You are surprised that no words are needed, but you think it's a script that's been used several times in the last few days, if only to spare the children the despair of their parents when they talk about what's happened to Billy. The atmosphere is tense, and the only sound is the crackling of the wood in the stove. You take out your notebook and look at them with a certain determination, as if part of you wanted to comfort them. As far as you know, there is no hope for their son. From what I've been told, your Billy disappeared at about 5:30 p.m. on Friday. He was wearing a gray suit, blue trousers, and black shoes. No coat or hat. I'm sorry to ask you directly, but had he ever run away from home before? Oh no, Billy never does anything like that. He's the sweetest and most obedient of our children. Believe me, that's why we can't trust why he went out alone. We can't understand why he went out alone. You nod at those words and continue with the questions. Whoa, this is a different perspective. Let's drink a little water. I'm going to keep... A lot of water will be consumed during this stream. Where were you at the time? I was here with Irene and Andrew, our other two children. I don't remember what I was doing. Maybe mending some washing? Edmund was still at work. He gets in late these days. Would you like to tell me how the events unfolded? Yes, all right. Like I said, I was in the house and Billy was playing on the stairs with the other kids. I didn't hear anything strange. In fact, I don't even know exactly where they were. I think upstairs, but I don't think I heard them down here. I'd call them in for a snack around 4 o'clock and give them some crackers, but they went right back up to playing. You mean the Bettenchid kid? Yes, Billy William's son. There was also John McNiff, another boy here in the block, who was home alone looking after his little sister. So there's another witness? Not really. He said he got back to the house before our son disappeared, so he didn't see anything. But he says he heard the children playing on the roof around 4:30. They usually play on all the landings, but they know that's when Andrew takes his nap, so they don't have to make any noise, so they go upstairs. So is it true what little Beaton says, that they were on the roof? Of course not. They can't reach the sky ladder, and they're too small to pull it down. They could never have done it themselves. I don't mean to be rude, but I wouldn't put too much faith in what the Beaton boy says. I don't know how to pronounce that last name, so I'm going to go with Beaton. He often uses words out of turn, like a 3-year-old. The roof of the apartment buildings where the Gaffneys live seems like a good place to investigate. After all, it is plausible that the Riker Avenue creature used some sort of access from here to enter the apartment. I doubt it rang the doorbell. I keep hitting that when I mean... Ah! We know how he was dressed. Oh God, no, I don't think so. All of his stuff is here. I don't see him taking anything. Also because, like I said, he was upstairs, so maybe he was playing with other Billy's stuff. Yes, they generally didn't mix toys. We even asked William, well, Mr. Beaton, if he had found anything of our son's in his house, but nothing. Couldn't he have taken something from his siblings that wasn't immediately obvious? Maybe a doll? No, otherwise Irene would have noticed. Don't take this the wrong way, Mr. Pikeman, but our children don't have so many toys that they wouldn't notice if someone went missing. Andrew has a cloth ball and a little wooden horse, you know. He's little. Billy has a toy train and some toy soldiers, but I think that's it. Our daughter has 3 dolls, but they're all in their place. And then Billy knew how jealous Irene is of her dolls. I think I also told him not to take things away from his brother, because once, after he had taken the figures, he started crying and wouldn't stop. Yes, it's true. Poor baby. He felt so guilty. As As for Little Beaton, he mentioned a boogeyman, didn't he? Yes, that's right. I was also there when the police asked him those questions, but it didn't help much. So the child said that this alleged kidnapper would take your son up to the roof. Is there anything else? A detail that hasn't been mentioned by the rest of the press? Well, as I said, it's not like you can put too much faith in what he said. At most, I think he mentioned a few hairs on the boogeyman's face, or rather on his mouth. I think he meant a mustache, but as you can see, it's not easy to understand what he's saying. Well, that does seem a little relevant. Well, that does seem like a relevant detail. No one in the place wears a mustache. God knows where he might have seen it. Do you think I could try and talk to him? Although I heard that his mother was admitted to a hospital yesterday. Yes, my God, what a shame. We don't know what she had. We just saw her being taken away. Mrs. McNiff told me that the father left the child with some relatives, so there is no one at home now. Knowing William, he'll be at the hospital, at least in the afternoon, after work. Okay, is there anything else you can think of? Perhaps someone you have met or visited recently who may have interacted with your children? He always gives a lot of credit to strangers, that's for sure. I'm worried about that too, but I can't think of anyone. Well, there's this weird guy who hangs around here sometimes. Weird guy? Who are you talking about? It just occurred to me. Perhaps I should tell the police. There's a man, I think an outsider, because nobody in the neighborhood knows him well, who has been wandering these streets since last summer. Do you know his name? Did he give you any reason to suspect him? Well, I don't know his name. I think he lives in a shack near here on 16th Street by the canal. This guy is always talking and playing with the kids. He doesn't seem very nice, to be honest. But he's never done anything strange as far as we know. Although I've never let Billy near him. Besides, I don't leave him alone in the streets. He's too young. Gowanus Hut. Suddenly there is a knock on the door. You freeze, fearing that someone from the building may have noticed you while you were talking to Mr. Gaffney at the door and alerted the police. A wave of panic grips your stomach, and you quickly think of ways to get out of the situation. But all the windows are closed, and there are no exits. Besides jumping out of the window, smashing the glass, and running through the streets of Brooklyn, bruised and bleeding, wouldn't do much for your credibility with the Gaffneys. On second thought, you're not even sure if you'll survive the fall, let alone break the glass. You get up and prepare to face what could be a very bad situation with only your words to help you. Mr. Gaffney calmly goes to open the door, and you realize that you are holding your breath, only when you see that it is a couple of ordinary people, dressed as dock workers. At that point, you let out a long, silent sigh, hoping that the woman behind you didn't notice your unnatural tension. Excuse me, I had a little burp. It seems like those men were waiting for the father to start the search for the child, but since he didn't show up, they went to check why he hadn't come. Then the man turns to you and opens his arms with a certain dismay. I'm sorry, Mr. Pikeman, but I have to go look for Billy. Elizabeth, do you want to continue? Actually, the Mass is starting soon, and I still have to prepare the children. Mr. Pikeman, would you mind if... You'd almost forgotten that it's Sunday. You don't know if the Gaffneys are particularly religious, but you understand that the woman is certainly clinging to anything in order to find her little one, and you have had a painful experience of how hope given by faith can become deleterious. Deleterious. Huh. I would have... Deleterious. That's a word I've never seen that word before. A lot of new words I'm learning, huh? But you decide to keep any comment on the matter to yourself. Don't worry, ma'am. I'd say we've had a nice chat already. Actually, I'm sorry for keeping you both for so long. You greet the children, while Elizabeth suggested they reciprocate, showing a rare sweetness. Irene, the eldest, does it immediately and decisively, while the youngest, Andrew, looks around sucking his thumb. But then you think, he's not even a year old. You can't expect too much. You remember that Daisy was already greeting and saying a few words at that age, but that girl was really smarter than her years. I promise that if I discover anything, I will let you know as soon as possible. You can count on that. Do you mind if I come down with you, Mr. Gaffney? So you join the group to leave the building with the intention of following those men to the first useful corner and then slipping away. However, you can't help but intercept the guard agent, who gives you a somewhat suspicious look. Nevertheless, Mr. Gaffney becomes your unexpected savior. Thank you very much for stopping by. Would you like to join us? Not that you know that the police officer might have some strange ideas about you, but it's the kind of coincidence that would be a crime to waste, being so rare. I would love to, believe me, but as you know, I have work to do. Of course, how silly of me. I'll wait for your news then. You nod and walk away, leaving behind the red brick building with its noisy crowd, hoping you won't find yourself in such a situation again. However, the day is still long, and you have no intention of spending it all writing that article, as your editor-in-chief would probably like. You have several leads to consider, and you'll have to use the time you have to the best of your abilities, relying on your intuition. You head towards your car, clutching the keys in your hand and glancing at the sky from time to time. The feeling of being watched grows stronger, as if eyes haven't stopped following your every move for a moment, waiting for something. Instinctively, you turn back to the crowd, but nothing strange seems to catch your eye, yet that sensation was so damn real. You get into your car, flip through your notepad, and contemplate your next moves. There are people you should interview, and places you should visit, but how much time will you have? Will that monster remain quiet for a while, or will it kill again? And how long until an innocent person is torn from their family, tortured, and devoured? The Chrysler's engine roars as you merge into the traffic of New York, aware that you are about to embark on an unwanted journey that promises to be worse than any nightmare. Only your determination and wit will allow you to reach the end. As you drive away, you can leave feedback on the experience you just lived by filling out this form. This might help you have a better, more intense experience when you continue the adventure. Until then, thank you for playing Omen Exitio Hunger. Well, I have to say, that was a really, really nice demo. Seems to be potentially some other options you can go for if you want to go for your editor-in-chief first, if you want to talk to him after you encounter the monster. But yeah, that was really cool. I liked that. Very, very nice. I really liked it. That was really good. So, that's Omen Exitio. Ah. Cool stuff. Please, go give this game a wish list. It definitely surprised me with a lot of the stuff that it was doing, and you know, a couple spelling things and maybe some grammar things notwithstanding, I really enjoyed myself with this, and it was kind of fun to narrate. So yeah, that's the first demo of this little grab bag.